Hi there, I'm the Brewmaster. Welcome to the Blind Eternities Tavern. I've been away for a couple of weeks, spent a good amount of time at MagicCon. Didn't play in too many events, pretty much just the unknown two-headed giant event with Gavin Verhey, but did a bunch of other fun things. We found all the Fibbletips, we played a bunch of games of Commander, and we met a lot of really awesome people. Probably met a few of you there as well. And I realized something. We all bring a lot of decks with us. But somehow it's never enough. So today I wanted to talk about how we can make our decks more flexible. Make our decks available for introducing new cards on the fly. Usually wherever we're going, if it's an event like this, we're going to be picking up a few new things, maybe wanting to try out a few new commanders. And I want to talk about how we design our decks to do that. So pull up a chair and have a seat at the table. And whether you're a button mash hack and slash controller bash, or a meeple moving mastermind of maps, mats, and minis, if you ruffle at the awful riffle shuffle scuffle, or if you're a click clack pick attack number ball luck sack, we're all here for the same reason. I'm Jake. Let's talk games. So before we start talking about how we build a deck, I think it's important that we talk about how we carry a deck around with us. Because gone are the days of carrying a single deck in a single box with no tokens or dice or any of that other stuff. And at a Commander night, you probably want to have a few decks with you, and at a convention, you probably want a few more. Now, my favorite box for carrying decks around is actually this one. It was a gift from a friend, and this box can hold probably upwards of 15 decks if you have them packed in neatly. But it doesn't travel particularly well, and this doesn't really fit in the backpack that I tend to use. So instead, if I'm traveling around, usually I'm carrying a box that looks a little bit more like this. Now this is the regular Ultimate Guard archive. It holds a good 8 boxes in here, and usually I sacrifice one of these boulders to carry dice and tokens and other stuff. But it does a pretty good job of carrying everything that I need for an average game night. But the thing is, I like building decks, and I decided it would be fun to get all of my Commander decks together. So I started grabbing all of them and laying them out, and some of them are deck boxes that you might recognize, others might be a little bit less common. You might not have seen some of these before. Some of them are pretty fun, and some of them are really unique. I don't think anyone else uses a Bucky O'Hare lunchbox as a deck box, but for my Yurlok deck centered on making the game feel like 1999, well, it gets the job done. But as these Commander decks start to pile up, and as we have more decks that we want to bring with us, it can be a little tricky to pack all of that in a reasonable way. And sure, you can take these decks and convert them all into boulders and put them all into separate archives and swap them out before every game night. I do think you find yourself in a position where eventually there's just too many. But something I found that's kind of funny about building Commander decks, the more you build, the more you brew, the more options you have, the more you want to brew more, and every new legendary creature you get is an opportunity to build a new Commander deck. And so you find yourself drawn to just constantly brewing new, better, stronger Commander decks, picking up precons and leaving them as is, but maybe making slight upgrades here and there, mixing a few of them together, finding new ways to introduce new cards. And no matter what you do, no matter how many decks you have, because I could actually keep going. Here, this is my CEDH deck here. I have my my old Scion of the Ur-Dragon deck back there. Here's my Squirrel Golgari deck. A little precarious, but it'll stay. No matter how many decks you build, no matter how many precons you buy, there's always this box. And you know the box I'm talking about. It's the box that looks like this. And this is the box where legendary creatures go. The box where all of those would-be commanders live. Maybe someday. Maybe we'll find the time, the cards. We'll take apart that Golgari deck that we have and find a new way to build it. Legend after legend, card after card. So many different options for building new Commander decks. I think the success of Commander is that it's a brewer's format, but like all brewers, there's only so much time in the day. There's only so many options we have. And even if you're doing a 32 deck challenge, and I have more than 32 decks, you still want to make more. And it's not enough to just swap out the commander. So how can we build a deck that's flexible? A deck that works with different commanders, a way that we can satisfy that impulse to brew, to make new. So now, let's talk about building the deck. I think in Commander, and I think when we're brewing decks like this, there's two main flavors that we want to keep in mind. There are certain commanders that are mechanically unique, and then there are commanders that are strategically unique. And when I say these, I don't mean the card itself, I mean the deck that it demands. A good example of a mechanically unique commander is someone like Anji Falkenrath. This is a deck that requires you to have a vast majority of your deck be cards with madness. And there's not a lot of other commanders that work particularly well with that. So generally, if you're building an Anji Falkenrath deck, it's not going to port over to really any other commander in that spot. But then we have cards that are strategically unique. There's a whole lot of Simic that want to play lands. And there's a whole lot of mono black that cares about discard or cares about cards in the graveyard. I guarantee if you took any Tergrid deck and replaced that commander with another good powerhouse generic mono black commander, the deck would still perform pretty well. It obviously wouldn't be as toxic as having Tergrid in the command zone, but it would still do all right. And I think that's true of a lot of monocolored decks. Unless you're trying to do something really weirdly specific, you can probably swap those out at will. My mono black deck uses Chainer, Dementia Master, which is a really cool card, but at the end of the day, it's just a reanimation commander. And swapping that out with any other mono black cares about cards in graveyards, the deck does all right. So it makes it super easy to load the deck up with legendary creatures or just throw a few in there as a sideboard and you can get them going really easily. But I think we can take it a step further. So let's ignore the mechanically unique commanders for now because I think that they demand their own deck. So let's talk about how we actually implement this. And I have a really good example. My green-black Squirrel deck. See, this is built from the Bloomburrow Precon, and that Precon somewhat uniquely has a wonderful suite of legendary squirrels that can all be swapped in and out as the commander, and the deck remains a powerhouse. But there's one squirrel that they didn't include in the Precon. And that's actually the commander that I wanted to use. So I swapped it out for Camellia. And I really like the way that Camellia interacts. You make food tokens, you make squirrel tokens, there's a lot of weird loops and a lot of support cards that can easily be brought in from Lord of the Rings and a few other sets, and it makes it a really fun deck to play. Ultimately in the Precon, I think I only swapped out maybe 15 or 20 cards, and it works pretty well. The way that I approached that was to look at the commander that I'm taking out, and then find the cards that specifically support it. I no longer am making the mana that the deck originally made, so I need to bring my curve down a little bit, shave off some of those high mana cost cards. I no longer care so much about making squirrel tokens. I need to make food tokens, because those food tokens make squirrel tokens. But the things that are solely there to generate more squirrel tokens are less helpful. So those cards can go as well. And as I walk through the list and find the pieces that no longer matter to the new strategy, or at least aren't core to the new strategy, we start building that list of trade-outs. And then on the other side, we balance that with cards that support the new commander coming in. as we balance the scales on this, we find that maybe a couple of those original cards can stay, and maybe a couple of those new cards coming in just don't work too well with the rest of the deck. I think ultimately I gave up on trying to include Ashnod's Altar because it doesn't really do enough with what the deck is trying to accomplish. Quark Clan Ironworks is probably better for its ability to sacrifice food tokens. But even with that, it probably won't fit too well. And so you reach a balance. You find the list of cards that you can easily swap in and out. You can mark those with a little piece of paper or a dot or something, but realistically, it's easy enough to remember what you brought in, and you can turn it back whenever you want. Once you've done that, it becomes really easy to take this deck and the sideboard that you've now created, and you functionally have two decks that fit in one box. I actually did that with the Doctor Who decks, and they live in a box that looks like this. This is effectively 3 commander decks, and it's really easy to swap between different commanders and a handful of other cards, and all of a sudden you have a very different build going, and your gameplay feels very different on the table. If you're talking about going to a game night and wanting to bring a few decks with you, this is all you need. This does everything that my big box with 8 decks in it does. I can play in a variety of different power levels with very different strategies. And it also allows me to keep the game fresh for myself. Maybe I can mix and match part of one list and part of another list, just to keep the game interesting. I'd encourage you to play with it a little bit. I don't think there's a perfect solution, but flavor it to taste. Swap out the cards that you don't find as interesting and bring some new stuff in, even if you're not sure you like it. Because it gives you more options, gives you more experience, and it allows you to try out a few new things, which I think is pretty cool. And I think that that is one of the best parts of Commander. I mean, that's what really draws me to it. I often say that my favorite format is pre-modern. I love the way that it plays. It goes back to a certain nostalgia for me. But Commander is immense. Commander is what Magic means to me. And as a format, it's kind of cool, but as a puzzle, as something to brew, as something to solve, I think Commander really engages me in a unique way. So then I think the question becomes, when should we swap these things out? What do we do with these bits and pieces that we've made, these small stacks of 15 to 20 cards that tie into specific commanders? Well, for a long time I've suggested that Commander could do with some version of a sideboard, some flexibility to upgrade your deck's power level up and down. And there's no reason why this Commander swap and some of these supporting cards can't play into that. Throw all of your game changers into that pile with that high-powered commander, and swap those into something a little bit more chill. Again, you're not going to be able to do this with something like a Winota deck, but maybe some of these more good stuff piles, some of these Urza, Lord High Artificer decks, can swap out to a little bit more tame set of commander and follow-on cards. Tone the deck down a little bit, or tone it up. Include all of your Demonic Tutors, Vampiric Tutors, and everything else you really need to combo off, all your Doomsday Line and Glarbs, and swap those into that cool little casual good stuff deck that you had built. I think it gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives us some options for trying out new commanders when we're not actually sure if we even like them. I like the idea of Kefka, but I don't know if I'm inclined to build a new deck around Kefka. But I am perfectly willing to take my Saruman deck, built from the Precon, the Sauron Precon, and pull out a few of those, add in a few Kefka pieces, and let it ride. See if it's something that I want to explore further. Having those options, having that flexibility, I think is what makes us better Magic players, allows us to be brewers in new ways. I think there's so many cards coming out now that it can just be too much. you're drowning in options, and you're never going to have the opportunity to build every single commander that you pull. But with a strategy like this, with the option to play them only once or twice to see if you want to try it more, I think it's something that we can use in our Magic journey. Something that helps us play more Magic. And at the end of the day, I think that is ultimately the goal. I love building decks, I love trying out new things, and I fully intend to try this on a few decks to give some of these cards a shot. Some of these cards that I might not have taken a second look at before. It's been really nice talking to you.